anywhere. Well, my dad's family has been out in the Robstown, Banquette area for generations, but I didn't grow up with them. I grew up in Seattle, and as was talked about in the last workshop, in that really wonderful multinational workshop, I am a migrant. I have moved all over this country. Starting in Seattle, went to high school in rural Indiana, moved back to Seattle, went to college there, went to college then in Indiana, in New Jersey, then California, back to New Jersey, to Chicago, back to New Jersey, back to California, back to Seattle. It's been a life of migration for me across the country. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to make sure that everybody's if you open the workbook to the first page, it's got the description of what we're going to do today. We're going to explore some of the reasons people write poetry, many of the ways that we benefit from writing and reading poems. And then we're going to share some topics and think of that we're thinking of writing poems about, reflecting and brainstorming together what thoughts, feelings, experiences we might want to express in our poems. And then we're going to practice writing, presenting, and getting feedback, asking for feedback. As a public speaker, that's one of the things that really helped transform my life when I had an opportunity to get training in public speaking and to be videotaped and to be critiqued on how I was presenting myself, how I was being perceived by other people. And so public speaking is one of Americans' greatest fears, one of our greatest fears as a culture, as a society. So we're going to come back to the public speaking in a minute, but we have enough time. Down at the bottom there, if you would mind, I'd like to go around and just get to know who's here. It's a very interactive workshop. So if you could just tell us real quickly your name, where you were born, and where you live now, how often and how long you've written poetry, and then one thing in the workshop description that you're most interested in. Anyone first?
I'll go.
Yeah, please.
My name's Kate, and I was born in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Oh, my daughter went to school there.
Awesome. I've lived here a good long while, but I consider myself a native Texan. I live right down the road. Very I can walk to work if I wanted to. I haven't written poetry in probably over a decade. I did a whole lot when I was a kid, just a lot of limericks, which was really fun. But one thing in the workshop description you're interested in the most. I think I'm probably really curious about hearing the topics that everyone else wants to write about. You just never know what's going to come up and put it on board.
Me too. Thank you so much.
I'll go.
Okay.
My name is Mary. I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've lived here for about 8 years. I'm mostly, in my creative writing, a diarist. I've kept a diary since I was literate, and it's just has been a huge part of my life, and often poems come from my diary entries. So the thing about the workshop that excited me was just that it was about poetry. As a full-time educator and a mother, I feel like I don't get to engage the writing part of my identity as much as I would like to. So yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
I'll go next.
Okay.
I'm Sarah Lenz. I was born in Ord, Nebraska, and I now live in Corpus. I remember reading my first poem when I was about in second grade. But the last time I wrote a poem, I remember was in a workshop for National Poetry Month last year. So last April, I'm almost closing in on a year. I'm also a diarist. That's why I wanted to follow you. Like, I journal, and it's just fodder for all the creative work. So I'm excited about anything that involves notebook work.
Thank you. Thank you. Who wants to be next?
I'll go next, JD, since you're looking at me. I'm Janet Shue. I was born in Burlington, North Carolina, not too far from you, and moved back to Texas when I was 3 or 4. I've been writing poetry since probably elementary, since someone gave me one of those locked diaries. And I last wrote in Joy's class in November, right? Yeah. I took her class for 4 weeks and wrote quite a lot of poetry in her class. So since she introduced me, I'll go next.
I'm Joy, or JL Wright. I have lived in all 49 states, except, I have not lived in Hawaii yet. But I traveled for 5 years in an RV, so I've got you beat.
You do. You do.
I tell people that I was born in Minnesota in a taxi cab on I-35, and Texas sucks so much I just slid on down. Because if you get on 35 and drive north, you end up in Minnesota. And I have been writing poetry since I was in 3rd grade, and I have evidence to that fact.
Good. Good. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
She's very published.
Don't intimidate me
That's my
now.
claim to knowing a published poet.
Who wants to be next? Go ahead, please, if you want.
My name's Maribel Boone, and I was born and lived here all my life. I don't write poetry very often, but I've probably written it on and off since like high school.
Yeah.
And then I'm just excited for the whole thing. I don't know about what I'm interested in.
Thank you so much.
I'll follow. My name's Lauren. I was born in Houston, Texas, but I'm going here for school, so that's the extent of where I've lived. Writing poetry, I used to write poetry a lot when I was younger for like venting purposes, kind of, like self-expression purposes. Now I write less and mostly just write for our class that we have about writing poetry. And yeah, I'm most interested in the workshop is the therapy aspect of poetry.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to introduce themselves?
Sure. My name is Tesso Somo. I'll be presenting tomorrow at 11, so don't forget to show up. I'm from LA, and I've been writing since the late 80s. Sorry to say that, but my first book took me 30 years to get out, so don't give up hope. I'm on my 3rd, 4th book, so some of the reasons that I write are more like to answer questions that I have, and like, before you're like, well, do you trust an outside source? And I've come to use poetry as a way to kind of answer like tough questions for myself. So I kind of work through the questions, and then out of that whole process, like you end up developing a way of like coming to understand the question, and what you through the poetic craft generate as the answer.
Absolutely.
For yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you. Come on in. Thank you. Yeah, please.
My name's Carrie. I am from Corpus Christi. I've lived in a couple other places over my lifetime, but back here now. And Corpus has always been home. I'm glad that y'all are here. You made your way here to Corpus. I've been writing, I really don't differentiate writing poetry from writing in general. I think that for me, writing is kind of like thinking, and ever since I was able to write, it's been something that I've done. I'm from a large family, so writing has given me that space to expand my thinking without being trapped in my own head. So I really can't say when I started, but just I guess as soon as I could put letters together, and it's always been something enjoyable for me.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I feel so much that too.
My name is Manuel from Corpus. I'm just learning. I've been reading poetry since a long time. Just here to learn.
Perfect. Perfect. Give it a try. Anyone else that I miss? If you like.
Yeah, my name is Osmani. I live in San Antonio, and I have been writing poetry since I was in high school. I did like a poetry chapbook / zine that I collected, poems from other people, my classmates. And then I kept writing for like political self-expression. And then for 10 years, I didn't write anything. And then I went through a breakup last year. And then that got me writing poetry again. And that's why I'm here.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much. I actually stopped writing after a breakup. You know, I was writing a lot of poetry, and then, but let me just move right on if you don't mind. So. We're going to just follow on the workbook. You're welcome to write in it. You're welcome to take this with you and use it again and again and again. If you have friends or family or students that you think that it might be useful for, by all means, go ahead. On the back, it's got some QR codes and some hyperlinks. And that's where I'd like you to give me any feedback. You know, go ahead. It's public. I don't mind. If you enjoyed the course, what you liked about it, if you want to give me a LinkedIn recommendation, please. But if you feel free to connect with me there as well, if you want to continue working or sharing poems with me or inviting me to come work on some poems with you or with some other groups as well, there's some links on the back there. So what is poetry? That's a stumper. Yes, ma'am.
Poetry is the voice of the people.
The voice of the people.
It is the way of carrying a message from one place to another place before written language.
Ooh. Thank you. Anyone else? What is poetry to you?
Lyrical self-expression.
Lyrical self-expression. Anything else? Where do we experience poetry? Well, let's dig down a little deeper. Where? On the freeway?
Absolutely.
Where? What? Pardon?
On the billboard,
Absolutely on billboards,
found poetry on the street signs.
on street signs, in the restrooms at the coffee shop.
She said limericks.
One of my all-time favorite poems I discovered in the bathroom in a coffee shop in Berkeley, California. Faith is the caged bird that sings to the light of day before dawn's first light. I don't know who wrote that. It wasn't attributed to anybody. Somebody at one point told me that they had read it, that it's a published poem. I've always attributed it to anonymous because I don't know who wrote it. Where else do we find poetry? Where else do we experience poetry?
At a gas station. I actually wrote this down. I was at a gas station in Refugio, and this man was talking, he's like a local customer, I guess. He was talking to the clerk, and then he said this as he was standing there. Some brown eyes are beautiful, just depends on who's wearing them. Some aren't really brown, but have green in them. And that just struck me, and I got in the car and wrote it down. I was like, that might be a poem someday. Me having brown eyes, I don't know, I might use that, but I was just like, that man's a poet, he didn't know it. You know,
That's
like,
beautiful.
just how he said that. Some brown eyes are beautiful, it depends on who's wearing them.
Very nice. Very
I
nice.
have one that I collected. So I took Alfred Hitchcock's drama His Life with dull bits cut out. And then I added, on the other hand, poetry extracts the critical, emotional, and analytical content of the boring parts of life.
So you pulled that from a book or a published...
No, so Alfred Hitchcock is famous for the first part of it, then I answered back.
Right, exactly. Wonderful.
Poetry is this.
Anywhere else that we experience poetry?
Out of the mouth of my 6-year-old. Yeah.
Boy, oh
They're just
boy.
playing with language, and they're so fluid about it, and just the sounds of it, and blending nonsense words with words they hear, or mishearing words and using them in a sentence. So there's that just playful
The
element.
playful learning of and sharing of language. Absolutely. Where else do we experience poetry?
I think of poetry as obviously, defined by language, but also something that transcends it. So moments of just transcendence when you experience something beautiful or something that has such depth and complexity that you want to express with language, but also language can't quite touch it. And so the space between the language and the experience, I think, is poetry too.
The space between the experience and the language. That's very poetic. Absolutely.
Nobody can use that, that's hers.
For me, just generally, it's like when I want to memorialize or document a feeling or something that happened.
Yes, an ode or an elegy. Those are specific types of poems that are all about memorializing or revering people and things. Who are some of your favorite poets?
E. E. Cummings.
Oh,
Louise Glick.
nice.
Ada Limon.
Langston Hughes is one of mine.
Ross Gay.
One of mine was a local poet, Tito. I can't think of his poet name or handle or whatever it's called. And then Millionaire Mo, she's really good too.
Tupac. Tupac was an amazing poet.
Dire Straits.
Whoever wrote their poetry, songs, their lyrics. Yep, yep. What are some of your favorite types of poetry?
Rhyming.
Okay.
Heartbreak.
I know one person here at the festival loves haiku. There's a haiku walk, there's a haiku battle. I've been on the Zoom calls with him, and he is all about haiku, loves haiku.
Talk to me if you want to sign up for the haiku.
Thank you, there's the plug. There's the plug from the committee. Anyone else?
I like playful limericks.
Yeah, you mentioned limericks earlier.
My baby, just stuff you can rhyme off the top of your head.
I absolutely adored Shakespearean sonnets for the longest time. Adored some poetry that has really complex rhyming schemes, rhyming patterns in them. And then I got to really playing with the spacing inside of the poem and how we can use spacing inside of the poem to adjust or modify or manipulate the flow of the poem in the presentation as well as in the delivery. So let's move on. Why do we write poetry? Why do we write and recite poetry? We already mentioned many of the reasons.
Because it's beautiful and we're drawn to beauty.
Gosh. Does anybody get a physical tug sometimes when you're reading or writing poetry? I do.
So.
I
That's the only way I'm gonna sell books.
Selling, making money, becoming published, right? A lot of people do. A lot of people, that's one of the reasons I started getting really serious about writing poetry, because I wanted to be published. I wanted to try to make a little bit of money off of it. I didn't, and I quit. But who knows? Maybe I will eventually put together some kind of an anthology or a collection of my own and try to get published and sell. Why else do we write or recite poetry?
I think there are things that, although we could express them in literal terms, sometimes they're truer when they are expressed through metaphor. And I think poetry is the perfect medium.
What was it that you said earlier? I've got it recorded, so I'm going to go back and look at it.
She said it's the space between the experience and the language.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's hard to...
Quoted already. You're famous.
What else? What are some other reasons that people write poetry? That you... Yeah.
I would say just because we have to. You can't resist it. You know, it's part of being a human to express yourself, to explore your experiences and reflect on them in a way that's not just, literal. That you try and make connections through using metaphors and images, and then you can connect with other people and their experiences.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's a way of expressing ourselves where we can be really, really honest and nobody else can necessarily understand it.
I don't need you to understand my poetry. I hope that you do. I hope you can relate to it. I hope that it makes you feel what I want you to feel when you read or when you hear it. But I don't need I don't need that if I'm just writing for myself. If I'm writing a romantic poem to my girlfriend or to my wife or my significant other, I might need you to understand it the way I need you to the way I want you to hear it, the way I want you to experience it. If I'm writing an angry poem for my sister, not to my sister, if I'm writing an angry poem for my sister to help me express how frustrating that experience was and why I might have left that situation without telling anybody or excusing myself properly, right? Then I might want you to, I might be using that poem or that poem to convey a particular point or a particular meaning, to share, and then I might want you to get to interpret it the way that I really wanted it interpreted. But at the end of the day, if I'm just writing poetry because it's just who I am and it's how I've learned to experience and share in this world, I really don't need anybody to approve of it, to compliment it. If you want to critique it, it no longer bothers me. When I was first writing, I got pretty offended and pretty hurt. My feelings could get hurt when I shared my poetry and people told me, oh man, this is hard to read a couple of times. When and where do you write poetry?
On the back of the motorcycle is the best place.
Is the motorcycle moving?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. How are you holding on?
You don't.
You're not getting on the back of my bike. I need you to hold on tight for my security and safety. Yeah, but thank you. That's one I wouldn't have expected. Thank you. That opened up a whole new set of opportunities of where I might try to write poetry. I'm now seeing myself falling in a parachute or hang gliding and doing some scribbling. Where do you write poetry?
Outside,
Where outside?
anywhere outside. Just not confined in little walls.
Good. Anyone else have a particular? I love to write on the beach. I love to listen to the waves coming in and feel the warmth of the sun. Not too hot down here, not midday, not in the heat, not in July, August, September down here. But if I can put my feet in the sand and I can listen to the waves and I can feel the warmth of the sun on me, and then I can just start writing and I can lose myself in the ink and the pen and the eventual arm ache that I get, right? Where else do you like to write poetry?
Just when the thoughts come, Tito, the local poet, he said a couple of years ago, he gets, I don't know if I'll pronounce it right, the Spanish word, onaidas, like ideas, thoughts, and he would have little, like me with this, just little pieces of paper all over. And so then he started just combining them because sometimes they may not turn into a poem, but he has all these like thoughts that come to him that are given to him. He said like over 2,000. So he put them all together and he got published. And just the randomness, that's how it always comes to me. Like this morning I woke up and I immediately thought of the song, I can't remember how it starts, but if something about mockingbird, if that mockingbird don't sing. And so it was already a point was kind of like, what if the mockingbird did sing? Is that still love? You know, and then if, you know, about the diamond, and what if someone doesn't buy you a diamond? Is that still, that's been stuck in my head all day, like, I don't know, a thought, I don't know if it'll turn into a point, but like just random thoughts like won't leave my mind, like that's been with me since this morning. I'm thinking, I just need to sit and write and let it flow and see what comes out, because, you know, I haven't thought about that song since probably I babysit kids or something, you know, you'd sing it to them as a nursery rhyme or whatever, and it was just so random that it came. So that's when I think, okay, this random thought has come, I need to write on it.
Thank you so much. Probably in the mid to late 80s, I was waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning and just, you know, with a poem in my head. Or with a short story in my head, and I would get up and I would journal and I would write it down, and that was when I was writing. We're gonna try to move a little bit quicker now because I really want to get to the practice part. So the next question, how do we write poetry? That's about your rituals and your methods, and I included that in particular because, again, I was thinking about the recovery groups that I'm working with, and you know, do you need a cup of coffee to write? Do you need candles and wine? You know, I quit drinking, but when I was drinking, I used to be a statistician, different life ago, and I would tell people, I don't do math once I've had a beer. Once I've started drinking, I just turn it off. It doesn't work anymore. So thinking about our rituals, our habits, our traditions, when or how do we need, you know, do we need a certain set of props? Do we need 3 different colors of pens? Do we need our book? Can it be a series of just sticky notes that we have lying around the house? Those are things to think about in terms of making it easier, making it simpler, making it more of a habit for us as we start to write, and then also trying to help other people who we might want to encourage to become more of a writer. On the next page, it's got the dictionary definition of poetry. We covered most of that. Poetry is literary work with special intensity. Literary work in which special intensity is given to the expression of feelings and ideas by the use of distinctive style and rhythm. The important thing in this definition to me is that poetry is a noun. It's a thing. It's a product, right? It's not a verb. Writing or thinking, that's the verb of poetry, right? But then it does have down here some of the other things that we talked about, something regarded as comparable to poetry in its beauty. The quality of beauty and intensity of emotion is regarded as a characteristic of poems. So let's get into writing. I'm going to go through these next prompts pretty quickly, and then what I'm going to ask you to do is to help me capture 1 or 2 topics and 1 or 2 thoughts or feelings from all of the ones that we're going to identify, and then a voice. And then while you guys are practicing writing a poem, I'm going to produce a poem as well for the group. So you're going to create your own individual poems, and then I'm going to try to create one for the group based on all the different things that we talk about. So what are some of the ways that we benefit from writing poetry? Yeah. And other people. Absolutely. Absolutely. Self-reflection. We talked about catharsis, emotional release, not keeping those feelings inside of ourselves.
Noticing. We keep our noticing sharp.
Thank you. That's wonderful. It sharpens our attention and the things that we are that we are noticing around us.
Strengthens our voice and even just our ability to self-affirm and say, you know what, my thoughts, just by making them worth writing down here, these are my thoughts, they're worth something, even if it's just for me.
Yeah. Wonderful. So one of the things it talks about a little bit later in the book, don't go to it now because we don't have time. As an undergraduate at the University of Washington in the 1990s, I studied both English and psychology. In psychology, I was studying the Bachelor of Science, the science of psychology, and in particular, I was studying neural network development and the interaction of behavior, drugs and behavior. And so one of the things that I'm always fascinated with is how the physical act of writing is different from a keyboard writing, right? And it's different from thinking or talking. And if you think about it, the different ways that we learn, when we physically write, it hardwires our neural network in very specific and different ways than when we're just talking or when we're reading or when we're doing other types of things. And so the physical act of writing poetry is both developing neural networks specific to the physiology of that, but it's also connecting those neural networks to our thoughts and emotions. And as we are clarifying and confirming and reaffirming and validating our feelings and emotions and experiences in poems by writing them, we're deepening the neural network in our brain. That's one of the benefits of writing poetry for me. I can't see it. I can't prove it. I mean, we could get into all the BS of psychology that I studied that would be able, we could get the mental dies, and we're not going to. But for a lot of people who have mental and intellectual disabilities. I survived a series of traumatic head and brain injuries as a child where I didn't remember who I was for a period of time. And then in 7th grade, my teachers, a group of teachers at the middle school, they got together and they decided that one of the things that they wanted to try was to teach me how to write calligraphy, both to slow me down, to make my writing more intentional so that they could read it better, right? But also to help develop the creative side of me, because I was already becoming too intellectual in 7th grade, right? And so they wanted to slow me down. They wanted to make me more intentional in what I was putting on the paper, to help them read my writing, but also to help me become a little bit more creative. And so that's partly why I do this as well. One of the benefits for me in writing is again, coming back to how we write. Boy, if I've got a calligraphy set with 3 or 5 tips, and the different ways that the ink flows off of those different tips, then I'm having a lot of fun. And then if I can put some of my own thoughts and feelings into poems with those different calligraphy tips, I'm in heaven. I'm in heaven. So let's get going. What are some of the topics that we're thinking of writing poetry about today, right now? What are some of the topics that you might write your poem about right now? Feeling lost? What about feeling lost?
Feeling lost emotionally, not so much lost in a physical space, but
Feeling lost alone? So the sense of loneliness or being alone, which is different than loneliness?
I think just feeling like I don't know what my compass is anymore. I don't have certain anchors that I'm used to.
Oh, I am so there in my life right now. I am so tired of being there in my life right now, and I'm so trying to enjoy being lost in my own life right now. What else? What other topics are you
I
thinking?
want to write about strawberries.
Tell me what you're going to write.
I don't know. I had strawberries for breakfast. So I
You
wanna
had
write
strawberries
about
for breakfast. First of all,
Or use the word strawberry in a poem. I don't know.
sure. Oh my gosh, I could go on, but what else? What other topics? Sleep deprivation. Now that's an interesting poem. That could get a little long. That could get a little technical, or it could be very discombobulated and
Play around with it in a lot of different ways, yes.
sleep deprivation.
Hunger.
Mary says I'm hungry.
Hungry, yes, hunger. Ooh, there's a lot there too, isn't there?
Yeah, because it can go in all kinds of different, what are you hungry for?
How's it feeling? What's the physical feeling? How is it distracting you from what you? There's so much in hunger. Yeah, that's one of our core. That's one of our Maslow hierarchy. Ooh, there's a lot there. What else? What other topics are you thinking of writing about? Okay, then what thoughts or feelings or experiences? One of the things that we that I heard being talked about, the D.A. Lockhart, he kept mentioning monarch butterflies. And I knew it, but it's still just fathomable to me to know that the monarch butterfly starts in Mexico, and they flutter on the wind. They flutter for generations up to Canada, up to Seattle, over to the New England areas, past the Canadian border, and then they flutter back in other generations. And I'm bewildered by that migration, by that movement, intergenerationally. How do they know? If they start, and then 5 generations later they're in Canada, how do they know to come back to the same breeding ground? Nature. I write about nature a lot. What do I write about nature a lot? Oh, right now I'm thinking about digging what it would feel like to dig below that top level of heat and get down into the cooler, moister sand underneath it. Any thoughts, feelings, experiences you might want to write about? Well,
I
you
just went to the beach yesterday, so that's sand.
okay. Okay. We're going to move right into it real quick. The last question, what voice? What's your voice or what's the tone of your poem going to be?
Fascination.
Fascination. Awe.
Anger.
Anger.
I'm writing about, I've been trying to support a couple of local environmental groups and about the desal plant and with the city council and it's just so frustrating that industry has captured our elected officials with money and what it's going to do to our environment and to the Hillcrest, it's environmental racism, what they're doing to that area and to what it's going to do to our bays. Yeah, so that's what came to me.
So who would your audience be?
Probably elected officials, I guess.
Elected officials, some of the residents, the Hilltop residents. I was at an
Well, the community, there's a lot of people, a lot of my friends they're all out of touch. They don't, and our water bill in 3 years is gonna go up $25 something more a month because of this loan. And like I'm telling all my friends and they're just like, oh, okay, they don't care. I'm like, oh, well, 3 years you're gonna be pretty pissed off. You're gonna be like, why is our water bill so much and we can't get water and we can use 6,000 or more, but they can use 25,000. The community's just not aware of it. They're all asleep. It's just about 400 or 500. It seems like active people trying to work on it, and the indigenous group as well, because it was all taken from them where they want to put part of this desal plant.
and I just learned from I just learned from another group that there are plans to build a chlorine factory, a chlorine plant out by Robstown, that is going to need an incredible amount of fresh water.
Yeah, they've sold us out. Corpus provides water to 7 counties, the city of Corpus, so it's all the rural counties around us too.
Yeah.
That are already being affected.
So you have some prompts, and then you have a couple pages next for you to practice writing poem. You can do a practice run if you want to, and then you can do a final version if you want to, or you can do 2 poems if it comes to you. But before you do that, take a look at the next pages 8 and 9. That's the presentation part. And if you think I put a few of my own expectations there, just be confident, be quick. We're not really going to have any time to introduce or talk a lot about the poems. I really want to get a chance to hear you come up and present and then get feedback. So that's the next page. Page 9 is for the feedback stage. After you come up and you share your poem with us, stay up here, stay in presentation mode, keep your eye contact, and then ask for feedback. If you put some ideas down there about what kind of feedback you might want to get. Do you want to get feedback about your hand gestures, about how your eye contact? Do you want feedback about the tone of your poem, or about the content, or how it made us feel? So there's some suggestions there about what kind of feedback you might benefit you that we might be able to provide you as well. So the last thing before you get started, tell me
47 after.
Yeah, no, we're out of time. So go ahead and write. Go ahead and write. If you've already written a poem, just raise your hand when you're done, and then we're going to maybe get 1 or 2 or 3 people.
But writing poetry with
All right. Okay.
Okay. It is called Strawberry Anchors. What kind of feedback would I like? I would like feedback on if this poem means anything to anybody. Strawberry Anchors. Upon reflection, in days of sleep deprivation, hunger strikes anger in the ribs. A loss of emotion is pure fascination, written with the calligraphy pen. Thank you. Ooh, I got some snaps.
Anyone?
I love the line "hunger striking the ribs." Like, even though you didn't say it, it evoked like a xylophone and percussiveness, and so very evocative.
Good, because that's kind of what I'm feeling.
Then get some snacks.
I know, I should have had snacks next door. Anybody else? Did it mean anything to anybody? Did anybody get any meaning out of it other than?
I don't know about meaning, but it just made me feel a sense of connection with everybody. You brought together our different topics.
Sure did.
It was cool because you mentioned strawberries and you're also writing with the calligraphy pen.
Yeah. That's great. Thank
I
you.
love how like just tight it was. Every word was just yeah.
Great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you all. I loved what was the name of it?
Strawberry.
Anchor.
Anchors.
Strawberry anchors. And I almost said strawberry chains. Right. And then, of course, I love the calligraphy reference. Thank you so much. Come on up.
All right, so I'm looking for the evocative painted image. Fits and starts. It would have been a blessing if the rain had come in fits and starts, spread over days, weeks, and months. But atmospheric rivers don't seem concerned with mudslides, flash flooding, buckling of hillsides. They just pour and pour till the concrete washes bulge and clog with the debris and swells of water.
Thank you.
Well, the first thing that came to me is I love how you varied your sentence structure. You would have these long phrases of adding this imagery and then a short clause like it pours. I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah.
And good use of repetition to have that short rhythm too that contrasted.
Yeah.
The image, the water and the river, and we were talking about the atmosphere and nature.
I thank you as a Minnesotan for your northern voice because it's something that's very familiar to me.
Oh, is it? I'm very far south from Minnesota, but thank you.
So when you asked for feedback, you asked for the imagery.
Evoke painted image.
I close my eyes. I often close my eyes when I'm listening to speakers or poetry especially. And as you got going, again, the flow was fabulous. And we had already talked, so I already had that California connection. I lived in California, and so I started to see San Diego, the pictures from the media, and then all of a sudden I was transported back to LA to some of the parks that I had been climbing in that hadn't flooded, but I imagined them flooded. And then all of a sudden I was in the Pacific Northwest where I grew up in the whole rainforest, and then I was transported to Mount St. Helens right after Mount St. Helens erupted. If you've never seen what a SLAR is. A SLAR is a river, a boiling hot river full of trees and boulders that's raging down the mountain. You invoked a lot of imagery for me. Thank you so much. Who else?
Nobody else wants
We're family and friends now. Come on. Nobody's going to be critical.
take anybody else's spot.
Nobody's critical here.
Volunteer for everything.
We don't have anywhere else to go here anyway.
I didn't even do the other. What am I supposed to do? Talk about what kind of feedback I want?
Yeah.
Meaning. Does this mean anything?
Sure.
It's kind of like a niche. Okay. Did you know there's a secret society? Did you know their voice exists inside of me? Did you know they'll tell you everything you need to hear? Did you know they can wash away your fears? A hidden face, they're every place. I'll tell you the secret. Don't leak it. Be sure to stay calm. The secret society is moms.
Oh! Wow, that was awesome. What meaning did anyone get?
I loved it. I thought like, oh, what's she gonna tell us? There's this secret society and I need to go check it out.
Build up.
Yeah.
The suspense, yeah. The drawing in, and then when you dropped your voice, I was hooked. Absolutely, the engagement, wow, that was, and the repetition of the verse, and then when you didn't repeat the verse, I was like, wait a second. Yeah, that was really awesome. Wonderful. Thank you.
If anybody this is what I was thinking about. If anybody's thinking about becoming a mom, you have just an amazing support group from everywhere. It's incredible. People can come from out of the woodwork to help you.
It's so true. Anyone else? One more time for one more, if anyone else. Okay, so I told you I was going to cheat, and I cheated, and I used ChatGPT. I told you I was going to cheat. But you know what? It's here. Okay, and I have finally started playing with it. And I did a practice of this with a friend at dinner one night, and I was like, wait a minute, let me see what we can come up with. Okay, so the prompts that I put in, I said, hi, acting again as an experienced poet, draft a 50 to 75 word angry poem about the migration of monarch butterflies, expressing awe and frustration for people who worry about degradation of habitat. Okay, ChatGPT came back and said, monarchs dance in skies once pure. Now tainted by greed, they endure. Their journey, a marvel, a sight to behold. Yet man's destruction leaves the story untold. In rage, we watch their dwindling flight, bound by chains of our ecological blight. That's not a bad poem. It's pretty basic in the way that it's laid out and everything, but if you're we're all poets, but if you want to experiment with ChatGPT, why not teach AI poetry, how to understand and express what we're feeling and experiencing. Now, that's just the end of that experiment. Thank you guys so much for being and for playing and for going along with me. Thank you so much for letting me do this.
This is fantastic. So
Yes.
I have to make one plug because you were talking about how our writing changes with our mode.
Yes.
And so I want to let you know that we are having an open typewriter type-in all day Saturday during the book fair. And so that's from 9 to 5. A group called Austin Typewriters Inc. is coming down from Austin, Texas, and they're going to set up just a bunch of typewriters, and you can just come in and type on them. So you don't want to miss that. That's at All Saints Episcopal Church. That's the church at the corner of Castoris and Staples. So I hope you can come out. And
that's actually how I came to be here.
Yeah.
Because I was at All Saints for that other festival, and you were there with these ancient typewriters, and there was a prompt. There was a prompt on the board, and I waited my turn, and then I started clicking, clacking, and enjoying the old school feel of having to hammer with that one that would not go all the way down.
Diana's husband wrote the poem about me, and I framed it.
Yeah.
That's her name, yeah.
Absolutely.
I've known him through work stuff, and he wrote the poem about me and one about my mom, and we read them to our family, and then I framed mine. I have it in my office. So it was
and there's a couple of poems in there of mine. One that I did get an award for that did get published. The other two were just personal. One was dealing with grief. My mom passed away, and we were coming up on an anniversary, or the holidays is what it was. And then the other one, I don't even remember what the other one was about. That one's about belonging and not belonging.